When I was a child, I heard lots of rumors about my paternal grandparents. Well, in all honesty, I heard most of the rumors about my grandfather. The rumors said that he was a footman at Buckingham Palace, and we had a picture to prove it. They also said that he missed the Titanic when he immigrated to Canada and that he stole a canoe and traveled a fur trading route. These tidbits were intriguing, but I wasn't intrigued enough to ask enough questions to preserve the full story for future generations. About 10 years ago, I stumbled upon the journal he had written about his rumored canoe trip. Reading it when I was younger had only confused me, as I couldn't find a place called Port Nelson and wondered whether he had transposed the words and meant Fort Nelson, British Columbia. I asked myself, how could one canoe from Fort Nelson to Winnipeg? And why would my upstanding citizen of a grandfather, who referred to everyone as a sterling chap, steal a canoe? I decided he must have been writing fiction. Reading the same journal again 10 years ago, with the assistance of modern-day online mapping programs, I was able to find a ghost town on the shores of Hudson Bay named Port Nelson. From there, I was able to plot all the points that grandfather mentioned in his journal and found that he and his two friends had canoed 600 kilometers against the flow of the waters of the Hayes River system to the north end of Lake Winnipeg. They were apparently fleeing the site of the proposed terminus of the Hudson Bay Railway. I was hooked. I had to know what happened. I began what became 10 years of research into my grandmother and grandfather's lives, unfolding an amazing story of romance, tragedy, and adventure. A search on Ancestry confirmed he had in fact been a footman, but not quite at Buckingham Palace. He was a footman to the Earl of Harewood, a good friend of the king. Ancestry records also confirmed that he arrived in Canada in the spring of 1912. However, he was slightly ahead of the sailing of the Titanic. So the rumors must simply have meant that he missed the Titanic by having chosen to come earlier. I was amazed to see that he arrived in this country with only $25 in his pocket. It was the minimum amount required in that year for someone to be allowed to stay as an immigrant. I had other forms of research besides ancestry databases. I had family artifacts, such as the Journal of the Canoe Trip and family pictures and postcards. I dug into the Library and Archives of Canada and found documents and artifacts of relevance to the story. My husband and I took a visit to the Inverness Family Research Center and found other documents and artifacts. And we visited many, many graveyards. The research entailed 2 trips to England and Scotland, where I literally walked in the footsteps of my ancestors through the neighborhoods I knew they lived in from the records we'd found. It turned out that my grandfather unwittingly arrived in Canada during an economic downturn. He made the difficult transition from footman to logger in New Brunswick. Needing long-term work, he signed on to a government expedition to Hudson Bay to assist with the building of the Hudson Bay Railway terminus. The promise of high wages did not become a reality, and his only choice was to find a way back to civilization on his own, hence the stolen canoe. I developed a new appreciation for how brave our ancestors needed to be to leave everything they knew behind and move to a new country that promised but did not always easily deliver a better life. As a young adult, I had been gifted my grandmother's promise ring in the form of a belt symbolizing them being tied together across an ocean during what was to be a brief separation while grandfather found work. I've worn that ring every day of my adult life and believe that its presence in my life inspired me to dig more deeply into their lives. Even after all the research, there were gaps in the personal historical information that did not allow me to tell what I believed to be the full story. Instead, I wove the facts I had uncovered with what I surmised must have happened into a biographical fiction novel titled A Ring of Promises. Such gaps always exist in ancestral research due to the usual 10-year gap between census records. In addition, the census records and the immigration records only document the barest of minimum of details. So there are lots of things left to the imagination. My experience leads me to encourage everyone to interview their relatives while they're still alive and well enough to tell the details of their rich history. You don't need to write a novel, just capture the rich details. What a difference it would have made to my journey of discovery if someone had taken the time to ask my grandparents the details of their story. Imagine how future generations will appreciate finding such rich stories attached to your ancestry family tree. There are lots of websites with hints about how to do these interviews well. I've even developed a guide that I'm happy to share.